Hi, good to see you all. And I got some feedback there. Excuse me. Good to see you all, and you probably saw that time lapse animation. We were pointing, or I was pointing the camera west, and you saw that right to left movement. That was northerly flow, and we're seeing that here in Texas. And I'll get my drawing tool back. Let me go into my menu here. But you can already see that on the station plots here. We've had this northerly flow in place for quite a few days. And normally, if it was wintertime with this kind of northerly flow, we would see dew points go down quite a bit. However, there is a lot of evapotranspiration from crop fields, forests, and so on. So that does keep the dew points up a little bit. And so we see a lot of upper 60s for the most part. The Corn Belt, especially the irrigated fields up in Iowa and Illinois, those can be major moisture producers in the lower levels if it's trapped enough. You can end up with dew points up to over 80 degrees, believe it or not. In fact, I think that's one of the records in the U.S. for dew point. It was about 82 or 83 around Springfield, Illinois. So starting out where we are here in Texas, looks like a couple of outflow boundaries. You can see that here on this radar composite. And those boundaries are pushing southward. So that'll probably increase the chance of precipitation a little bit overnight into tomorrow, maybe down towards the I-10 area. So we'll keep an eye out for that. So here's our surface pressure field. And you can really see how we have a northerly gradient now at the very top of the map. In fact, let me pan it manually here. See that high pressure off to the north. And as you go south, you get into lower pressure. In fact, off the southeast corner of the map there's Hurricane Hermine. And let's take a quick look at that. Here's the tropical weather map pattern we're looking at for this afternoon. There's Gaston heading off towards the Azores, and Hermine is finally upgraded to a hurricane coming inland into Georgia. I've got the radar standing by for that, so we'll take a quick look at that in a minute. But here's our 5-day outlook, because we're getting into the peak of hurricane season. So we've got another easterly wave coming off the African coast, and that looks like it's heading straight for the Caribbean. So the question is, in a week, is that going to continue heading into Central America and Mexico, or is that going to recurve into the Gulf? So there's a couple of options there coming up for later. So what does our hurricane look like? Let me bring that up real quick. Looking at the Tallahassee Weather Service radar here. So you can definitely pick out the storm here. Spiral bands coming in, and the centroid of the storm is about right in there. There's the eye. So it's coming within range of the radar, and if you wanted to, you could do your own tracking of the center and keep tabs on that. There's been a couple of tornado watches. So where are those coming from? Don't see anything in here that looks like a tornado, do you? So why are we getting these warnings on these ordinary storms? Well, velocity is definitely the key here, and you can imagine how hard it was forecasting tornadoes without the benefit of velocity. You know, back in the 70s and 80s, you wouldn't have had very much to go on. There's a general rule of thumb where if you take the hurricane's motion and watch the front left quadrant, that tends to be favored for tornadoes. That's kind of an empirical rule of thumb. And it's probably tied in a little bit to your stronger wind gradients coming on shore in that quadrant of the storm, whereas on the west quadrant, you're getting a slower ground relative motion. and less moisture. But let me get back to these cells here. The key is in the velocity. I'm going to show you base velocity. It's kind of hard to pick out anything, isn't it? Let me get rid of these boxes for a second. Where do I get rid of those? I'm not familiar with all the controls here in GR level X. Yeah, here it is off to the right side. Okay. What are we looking at in here? Seeing a whole lot of green. So can't really resolve very much. If we set the cursor in the middle of this, we're getting winds of, in fact, let me pull the bottom of this so you can see it. See there at the bottom of the screen, right there? The number that you see on the left right here, this is the velocity being sampled under the cursor. And we're seeing a lot of negative velocities, about 30 to 40 knots. Do you remember what negative is? Negative is always velocity coming towards the radar. So the radar is off to the northwest in that direction. So we're seeing a very strong component of motion this way. But how can we really see anything? How do we see contrasts? Well, one way we can do that is to correct the velocity for this strong ground. What we do is we go into the storm relative velocity and set a motion vector. We're going to set a from movement of 140 at 55. I've already got that in. And when we subtract out the ground relative motion, we see something like this. In fact, let me pull that out just a little bit further here. That's one thing about GR level X. We can kind of keep experimenting with values till we really bring out the contrast. And so I think we're going to do 40 here. See, now we're getting somewhere. We can really start picking out couplets, like right here. When we set the cursor here, we see a storm relative velocity of 10 knots outbound and about 10 knots inbound. And that can really be significant in these hurricanes because those can spin up. And you can see those circulations kind of increase a bit. We get a cyclonic circulation there. Let me bring up the tornado watch there so you can see what's going on. Or tornado warning. There we go. There's one cell there. That's probably significant. It looks like something else coming together down here. And that's the latest frame we have there. So these shear patterns, these very small scale shear patterns embedded in the storm, these can be very significant and give us surprise tornadoes. Spectrum width can also be helpful. You can see there's a lot of diversity of the droplet sizes in this part of the cloud, so it's kind of hard to tell what's going on, but sometimes this can clue you in where there's a strong cell coming together. Anyway, let me go back to our reflectivity there and just take you to the southern line or the eastern line. This is probably the strongest line of interest right there, so we're going to keep watching that through the night. Probably have to, I didn't check if there's any severe thunderstorm watches, but we're probably going to be watching this area of Florida and Georgia here for the next 6 to 8 hours. So that's Hurricane Hermine, and this is the forecast track right here from NHC. And they're bringing a very slow movement across Georgia and South Carolina. You can see from basically over 12 to 24 hours, we're only seeing a movement of about 100 to 200 miles across that area. And then by the time we get to Saturday, it's only progressed across the Carolinas, And these have tremendous amounts of moisture, so there's going to be definitely a risk of flash flooding. This is the Weather Prediction Center QPF 5-day precipitation totals. They're going for lots of 5 to 8 inch totals here, peaking at about 7 to 9. So this is going to be in a swath from Valdosta to Columbia, South Carolina, along the eastern part of North Carolina, and then off the coast of New Jersey there. And after that, who knows, there's still the possibility for that to recurve inland, to graze Cape Cod, or continue out to the Atlantic. That's a little bit of a ways off there. So let's take a look at the big picture here, and once again we're going to use the precipitable water. This is a kind of a good way to follow both moisture and the pressure systems. So do you see one system here in Canada that the model missed? I wouldn't say exactly it missed, but it didn't paint out very well. That's going to be this closed center right here in Alberta. For whatever reason, it didn't want to put a low pressure center there, but it's definitely there. Good 10,003 millibar low. So let's paint on those systems very quickly. There's the Pacific High. Other major system is this Bermuda High off the Atlantic coast, kind of extending as a ridge into the Gulf of Mexico. We have this polar high coming through Ontario. And what else do we have here? We've got a high pressure area here, high pressure area here. There's going to be something in between. This is a trough through the northeast coast, through this area here. Don't see much of a center. Probably one off the New Jersey coast here, maybe another one up here. Very, very weak centers, but it's definitely there. There's some sort of trough frontal system. And the next polar high, let's see, that's off the top of the chart, so I'm going to skip that. And then we do have a heat low in Southern California right there. So those are the main synoptic scale weather systems driving the pattern. And I can add on fronts. Let me do that real quick. Got a front coming into the Gulf, and it looks like that hurricane is picking up that front and is going to move northeast along that. Looks like probably another front coming into Montana right there. Not 100% sure of that. So maybe something like that. In fact, this front may actually come through Idaho. Maybe something like that. We would have to go to the charts to really pick that out. But anyway, this is the surface pattern that we're looking at. You can see this very strong northerly flow across the Midwest and the eastern U.S. So we can expect that's going to push out this moisture boundary to the south. And that will probably be the story over the next 24 hours. So we run this forward, and you can see things drying out in Tennessee, Arkansas, Kentucky, bringing in drier air. And it even makes headway into Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, and Texas. However, the high-pressure area begins moving on off to the east. There's the remains of Hermine right there. And we start picking up this return flow from the Gulf. So we're going to see a bit of a change in the pattern, and lurking offshore, a bubble of moisture right there, or if you want to call it a big slug of moisture. So that's going to be moving towards Texas starting at the beginning of next week. So that'll definitely have an effect on the weather here. So you see it coming up the coast there on Monday. And then let's see, by Monday night, Tuesday, yeah, this is going to be mostly Monday for Texas here. So we'll probably see the sea breeze become active, lots of cells along and east of I-35. And then that slug will make it into Missouri and Illinois by Wednesday. And those of you, I know we have a couple listeners in Indiana. Looks like that's going to reach you around Wednesday or Thursday. And just in time to make the leading edge of this next system coming in. See a bit of a warm front right there. So that may be tied in with that, may get an MCS out of that. And let's see, 168 hours. Let's see, we build high pressure around the 10th, 11th. So it looks like some cooler air coming into Texas and the central U.S. by then. And then September 12th, 13th, looks like things get pretty progressive with these outbreaks of Pacific air coming into the central U.S. Okay, let's see, what else do I have here? I think that's probably about it. There's our storm Hermine coming on shore. And this time of the night, you'll want to use infrared and water vapor imagery to track these systems coming in. You can go to a couple of different sites. My favorite, when I'm too lazy to use McIDIS, is this NASA GHCC page. In fact, I think they've changed their name here. It's weather.msfc.nasa.gov/goes. So you can put that in your browser right there, and they've got some easy-to-use tools here for looking at satellite animations. So say I want to look at the storm overnight, I can pick up animation here, make that six image loops. I'll increase this to 1200 and this to 900 because it's not 2005. Bring the quality up a little bit. Let's see, zoom factor medium. And they got a couple very cool enhancements you can pick from. Let me just pick one of those randomly and see what comes up. We'll do IR6. And then I'll click on the image and see what comes up. So that looks pretty awesome there. Pretty good shot of Hermine there, and you can kind of track the eye and follow that north. Okay, let's see. Well, guys, I think that's it for me. Anyway, we'll probably talk to you tomorrow at the very same time, and we'll probably be looking at Hermine on the Charleston or Wilmington radars. We'll take a close look at that and see what's going on this weekend. I appreciate you watching, and we'll see you tomorrow.